What movie was so bad it actually made you angry? The 1998 Avengers, with Sean Connery, Ralph Fiennes and Uma Thurman, saw it in the theater. It made me especially angry not only because it was really bad, but also because I had wanted to see Saving Private Ryan that same night but my buddies didn't. I don't even know how you screw up something like The Dark Tower during a time when every studio in the world was scrambling to jump on the cinematic universe train, and multiverses were starting to become a mainstream concept. Why would you take a property with those concepts woven into the very fabric of the story and completely ignore it? It's really bad when you put it that way. The Dark Tower series could easily be adapted into 30 loosely connected films. As I recall, the original plan was for several movies and some TV shows in between them, so they could get into all the little side stories and everything. Somehow that all turned into one movie that only resembled the books in character names. The thing that pissed me off the most is that Stephen King for years said, "I don't think there will ever be a Dark Tower movie. I don't think anyone could do it right," and then he allowed them to make that bullshit. Like, dude, the last several years was fucking prime time to get Netflix or Amazon to make a banger of a series and you fucked up. Talk about dropping the ball. I saw somewhere, don't remember where, someone linked it on Reddit, a journal of his interactions with the producers when they asked for his input. He pretty much said in the nicest way possible, if you make the movie like you're planning, you're killing all potential for a franchise, and gave very detailed explanations for why. He didn't mind the changes they made to events and story nearly as much as he did how they were literally just ruining all potential for future installments. Fucking shame they didn't listen. Not long after the first one came out, he posted a picture on his official Facebook of a copy of The Lightning Thief that was full of sticky notes poking out of the pages. The caption reads something along the lines of, "Each post-it represents one thing they changed or messed up. I have only finished half of the movie." After Rick read the script, he sent an email to the producers, saying, "When I first read the script, I'll admit I was plunged into despair at just how bad it was. If I were intentionally trying to sabotage this project, I doubt I could have done a better job than this script." Savage. He did then guide them step by step through why it was so bad, and what exactly they could fix while keeping it within budget, but they ignored him. Came here to see this comment. "I love the books so much, maybe even a little too much tbh. I even did a Greek mythology B at my school in the 7th grade because I was inspired by the series. I am from San Antonio and had the pleasure of meeting Rick Riordan at a local event shortly after the mythology B, and he asked the crowd a question about Greek mythology and I answered it correctly. Was one of the greatest moments of my life. He is so cool. I know he would have never been okay with what they did to his story. I was looking forward to it for so long, and when I finally saw the movie it really tore me up inside. I'm 26 now and it still haunts me. In high school I was an aspiring author, and I grew up right down the road from Christopher Paolini. I didn't know him personally. He was my idol, and the reason I kept writing. That movie though, it hurt me to the core. To take something so good and ruin it that badly. I went to bed with an empty pit in my stomach after watching that. It made me want to cry for him. I feel bad for those Earthbender actors. They were probably told do some martial arts moves and we'll add VFX and make it look sweet. So the actors probably eagerly took their families to the movie and saw. They didn't had any VFX to any of their moves except that one rock. Honestly, I'm 99% convinced him. Night Shyamalan didn't bother hiring a choreographer for his movie and just basically asked his actors to figure something out cool. I think that's pretty much his biggest mistake, simply off of how easy it was to get right. Hire a choreographer, have them produce fight scenes with their team, spec out the bending bits and show him the fight sequences while telling him how the bending would contribute. Let him critique, refine it, send it to a very low-level VFX team to add very ugly rough bending effects they can use as reference. Done. Even a mediocre choreographer could have made pretty cool fight sequences. You wouldn't have people just standing around while Kitara runs over and pushes someone. I'll forgive him the horrible casting because there's a chance his hands were tied. I won't forgive him his changes that make no sense to change. Name pronunciations. They're set already, let them be. Firebending requiring fire. This completely ruins how firebending works, since now it's horrendously weak. Just waterbend to put the torch out, earthbend to knock over the brazier. Plus it ruins things that happen later, like using fire as propulsion or combustion bending or lightning. The Avatar can't marry, what? How's the whole pining after Kitara thing gonna work? And the other sad thing is the actor who played Aang. In real life he's actually pretty Aang-like in personality. In the movie he wasn't even remotely like Aang. That is a terrible director at play. 3 was better than 2, at least in my distant memory. Leonard Nimoy opposite Peter Cullen was pretty great, at least, and most of the plot was just action. Alan Tudyk was in there, too, I think. Fuck 4, though. Mark Wahlberg is a piece of shit. The Romeo and Juliet law subplot was so unnecessary and creepy, and the action was just boring and bad. Who the fuck wants Transformers that just turn into clouds of dust? Never bothered with 5, but I keep meaning to watch Bumblebee. Edit. Alright, I'm convinced. I'll give Bumblebee a shot sometime this week. Highlander 2 is the most baffling sequel ever made, and then they tried to make the Renegade version, which made the plot make less sense in my opinion. I just don't understand what happened. Connor suddenly met Ramirez on an alien planet, but we saw them meet in Highlander 1. It was just so fucking weird. So the story to why it was so fucked is simple: money. They went way over budget in filming, partially because they had a record-sized fake city for filming at the time. So the production goes tits up. The insurance company steps in to salvage some of the money. Well, they took what was available and did a hack job in the editing room. Follow-on versions were more attempts to fix the original. There are a few documentary-type things floating around about this. Another fun fact from one is that the price of a lobster dinner when they started filming on location was like $2 and like $30 by time they left. Knew someone who worked in health that believed this stuff. While it might seem cute and harmless at one end, fundamentally it is pushing people into believing any suffering is a person's own fault and can be willed away. This is extremely dangerous and leads to empathy erosion. Got cancer? Wish it away. What? You're just not doing it hard enough. My family showed this to me while I was going through a rough patch, and I ended up being semi-convinced about the science of it. I haven't even thought about it for a long time, but funnily enough my guilt got worse for a while. Perhaps I'm experiencing the effects of watching movie to this day. Edit. I just looked up empathy erosion. Out of curiosity, how does it lead to this? Holmes and Watson. I'm shocked I haven't seen this listed. Like the movies they have made together before were absolutely hilarious. I fucking love Step Brothers. I heard there were bad reviews for this movies, but nothing actually prepared me for what I was going to experience when I turned it on. It was beyond stupid. There was stupid comedy, but this was just not. I didn't laugh one time. Instead I was repulsed and irritated. I turned it off. I couldn't continue. I was stressed out, actually. but absolutely awful this fucking film is. It caused me anxiety. I don't know how the ending goes, and I don't care to know. All I know, I hate how much I've watched, and it was enough. I hated the race scene at the beginning. In the first movie it shows her growing up and training. She's a young adult in some scenes and still getting beat up by other Amazons. She isn't perfect and still has much to learn and more training to do. In the new one, she's a kid and basically perfect at this super physically intensive race and beating all the more experienced and more physically fit adults. She only loses because her aunt grabs her. In one movie she has to work at being awesome. In the other, she's just awesome by default and doesn't earn anything. I finally got around to watching WW84 a month ago, and it was one of the worst things I can remember watching. It took me 2 separate sessions to get through it, and the only reason I finished was to see just how bad it got. It's so bad it belongs on the satellite of love. I will give props to Kristen Wiig for it, though. At the start it just seemed like she was playing one of her SNL characters, but she actually did a pretty good job of her character morphing into that thing they called Cheetah. Pacific Rim 2 was a bad fan fiction. Killed the female hero in a dumb way and the male hero didn't even get a mention. The designs were as ugly as possible and moved like Power Rangers, and they had teenagers doing funny things in them. Shit was so bad it killed a greatly doing franchise with even toys still selling since the first one in 2013. Yep. It's a textbook example of people trying to replicate the success of something while not understanding what made the original work in the first place. Del Toro knew that he could get the audience to buy into the robots being real if they moved and acted like robots that massive would in real life. When you take that realism away, you no longer feel like the world is real, and then, well, that makes for a shit movie. Doubly so when you're doing a sci-fi movie about giant robots battling monsters where you kind of need the audience to suspend their disbelief for it to work. Don't forget how it not only contradicted things from the first movie but of itself too. In the first we see that Kaiju are coming out of the rift and attacking all nations around the Pacific Rim. In the second we see evidence of the defenses built up in those other nations. Then suddenly it turns out that all Kaiju were coming out of the rift and making a beeline for the same damn spot. What the hell kinda of twisted 5-dimensional geography does their world have where that makes any sense? Limitless used the line, but it came from a layperson who didn't understand the science behind how the drug worked. So it's fine if it's inaccurate because the character wouldn't know that. Lucy doesn't have this excuse. It's spoken by the narrator and referenced in title cards throughout the movie. The concept is central to the plot. Another kind of crazy, random moment, but I just rewatched this and in that ultra spooky Coliseum cloning chamber place where the final Kylo/Palp battle is held, there are hundreds of thousands of unknown Sith followers, in the stands, cheering the Emperor and awaiting the fleet departure, etc. And then when the place collapses after the fight, literally all of them are nearly instantly crushed to death by falling rocks. By untold Sith dead. We hardly knew ye. How about the fact that they need some sort of seeking holocron to find the location of the planet when there literally would have had to have billions of people there to have thousands of star destroyers built and crewed, not to mention all the ships that would have to be coming and going delivering supplies etc. But literally nobody knows where it is because they're all underground. The Scythe Dagger storyline was so fucking stupid. If Rey was just a little bit closer or further away, or just a bit to either side, she would have held the knife up and said, "Ah well, I guess that was a long shot," and never realized that the knife was made to line up exactly with the wreckage of the second Death Star. What good is a map that only works when you're standing in a very exact spot? Also, Who is that map, knife for exactly? For the Scythe assassin to know where the Scythe Wayfinder is? As if they didn't already know where it was, as if the Emperor's former throne room wouldn't be an obvious location to search, and also why is it there in the first place anyway? The Republic never went to check the wreckage for, I don't know, anything. The Emperor never sent anyone there to collect the Wayfinder. No one ever came to recover scraps, and also, how the fuck is there a wreckage of the Death Star at all? They're just going to casually retcon it so that it didn't basically vaporize into dust. I hate that movie so much. All these points you make show me how completely forgettable that movie was. Even though I'm a huge Star Wars fan, I saw this movie once and I will never watch it again. I don't even remember any of the shit you mentioned up there. It was so horrible and nonsensical and boring that none of it stuck. The only thing I really remember is a lightsaber right at the end with waves crashing everywhere, and a memory of how fucking bored I was, and ready for the movie to be over. They messed up the nationalities of the characters because they are supposed to be Asian. Don't know if they were a certain region of Asia, so correct me if I'm wrong. Madingdongdich didn't even care about preserving the integrity of the source material. And let's not forget about how atrocious the bending is. Martial arts is how the benders use their powers: aerokinesis, hydrokinesis, and telekinesis. Firebenders have the perk of being able to conjure fire on their own, pyromancy, but still have to use martial arts. In the fucking movie, they reduced the firebenders badly because they needed existing sources. And then when Ira used pyromancy, the other firebenders were shocked, like TF, you can do that too. Honestly, two movies come to mind: The Men Who Stare at Goats and 2012. The first one was just so freaking stupid I actually considered asking for a refund, but that last one is purely for the lack of freaking story. It starts with a nonsensical claim that neutrinos mutated? And are heating up the planet. The rest of the movie is them running around escaping Armageddon, and in the end all is well that ends well. Where is the conclusion? Where is the logic? This was my answer as well. They previews promised me 90 minutes worth of the wacky hijinks of a guy that got shrunk. What I got was the same gags I'd seen in the previews, just stretched out to cover about half an hour, followed by social justice and environmental preaching that really had nothing to do with being shrunk, and sure as hell wasn't the comedy I was going for. I saw this while Movie Pass was still a thing, and going to see something simply because I'd already seen everything I actually was interested in was normal. I saw some great movies and some bad ones. This is the only one that pissed me off. Well, a lot of other obvious answers are already taken, so I guess I'll go with The Blind Side. Though maybe it's slightly more towards baffling than angering. I think some of it must be down to the whole American South football, Christian cultures that I just don't quite get. But the entire thing just had this kind of weird, creepy vibe to it. Like this white family arbitrarily adopts a poor black kid in a way that feels more like they're ticking off a box for a weekly church assignment rather than any genuine sense of empathy or goodwill, and they just throw money at things without a second thought, so it's not really any sacrifice on their part or something they couldn't have been doing to help the less fortunate anyway. But then once they discover he might have some aptitude towards football, it feels like it's more the family molding a hapless individual into what they want him to be while he barely has any agency himself. I think the school at some point declares that he scores extremely high when it comes to having natural protective tendencies, because schools test for this. and so they make football click by telling him to think of teammates as family members he has to defend, and I think there's also something about literally using ghost stories to scare him into applying to the college they support. I don't know, I just remembered coming away from this with a profound sense of the hell did I just watch? The Grey with Liam Neeson, where the plane crashes and they try to survive the wild wolves. The ending pissed me off so bad because in the commercials they showed him taping broken bottles to his hands in prep to hand fight a wolf. OMG, yes, let's have it. But the movie ending is him taping the bottles, and when he lunges to the wolf, cut to black, you don't see the fight. They showed the end of the movie in the trailer. A trailer is a promise of what you are going to see. They pretty much promised hand-to-hand combat with wolves. When the movie ended abruptly before this promise was delivered, I was pissed.